pulling the divinity from a leaf, sifting out the holy from our own bones, insisting God isn't bursting dazzlement through everything we've made, a hard commitment to see as ordinary, stripping the sacred from everywhere to put in a cloud man somewhere else, prying closeness from your heart. The worst thing we ever did was take the dance and the song out of prayer. We made it to the extent that someone told us to sit up straight, close your eyes, cross your legs. We removed rejoicing out of it, wiped clean its hip sway, its questions, its ecstatic yowl, its tears. The worst thing we ever did is pretend God isn't the easiest thing in this universe, available to every soul and every breath we take. I remind you off and on, and I mean no disrespect by this reminder, but when the Blessed Sacrament is moved from over there to the altar, and when it's put back, there's always a different tone in here, isn't there? And some people even change their posture. I'm just asking you, why do you do that? I remind you that the living God is in the person sitting next to you. You know it really is. It's not more over there than it is right here. It takes a long time, though, to want to believe that, to want to see that. It's much easier to from a distance, respect and honor than it is close up. And especially sometimes when people do things that we think they shouldn't do, even in our families, and we don't want to look at them anymore, we don't want to talk to them anymore, and then we struggle in our life to wonder where God is and all that. Well, to the extent that we do what we do to each other, we unconsciously are doing that to God too. So, I just want to remind you, because I remind myself, I wasn't always like this. I wasn't going to read this thing. I'm a little embarrassed, but I wrote this a long time ago. There's always a barrier preventing me from loving. There's a little boy standing by my side, beautiful hair, but he has hideous sores on his legs, open wounds. He has his hands like this, but I don't want to pick him up. I don't want to touch him. I let him struggle, hoping that he'll go away. But he persisted. He kept standing there with his hands on. Well, eventually, I bent down and I looked at him, only to see that he was blind. And my heart went out to him and my shell cracked as he clung desperately to me and I to him. Close as we were at that time, it wasn't close enough for me. I held him tightly, resting my head on his, and I wept. Wept in despair, for this boy was blind in Manila on the streets. What hope for him with me, so blind? And I observed in him the child in me. And I wept again, this time though with both joy and pain, experiencing the mystery of a love that overcomes all things. So I can still see that scene. I can see it very powerfully, and there's other scenes like that too. But now, when I take this and read it over and over again, it just reminds me of God that was in that little boy. And I was just so quickly to push him aside because of what was in my mind. I think we do that sometimes with each other. Especially those that don't fit into our neat understanding of how we're all supposed to be, how we're all supposed to act, how we're all supposed to dress. I'm going to be 75 in December, and I still get invitations to go to St. Lucy's to say Mass for them. They're teenagers. Well, we want a 75-year-old Pope to come and talk to them. What do I have to offer them? And the same up here in Davie. But they still come, they still call, and they still ask, and I still go. And God still uses me. This time I got their attention by asking if anyone out there knows of someone named Billy Amish. Some of you do. Huh? Well, they all of a sudden, the heads were all up like this. And I didn't think that I knew about that person. I've listened to some of her songs, and I've read some of the things that she's written. There's a very powerful article that she wrote about body shaming. I wish I would have had copies for the girls to read, but as soon as I said her name, as soon as I said body shaming, right away they were attentive to what I had to say. And what she wrote, the context of her article was, usually when she performs, she wears baggy clothes. She's not the typical person who dresses up and exposes lots of her body for whatever reasons, and the dress is very short and cut here and there, and she just wears, it looks like a potato sack on her sometimes. It just really looks baggy. Huh? And people on the internet assume the role and responsibility of pointing out to her how she looks. First of all, how dare anyone do that to anybody that they haven't even met and not even talked to? But feel so comfortable today on social media to shoot out whatever they want to shoot out to anybody, whenever they want to, about anything, and let it drop wherever it drops. That does something to people. Let me tell you, I hear it from our children in confession all the time, and I tell them to stay away from it, but they're addicted to it. They're drawn back to it like a magnet. The power that we have not only with our children during Safeguard Children Month, that's the safeguard by watching what we write, what we say, how we say it, how we do what we do with our children, because they catch it automatically, basically. So I went on to share how, in her article, she wrote, how dare you write about me and tell me how you don't like the way that I'm dressed with the clothes that I wear, and then if I were to wear some other kind of clothes, then you wouldn't like that either. And who am I don't need to listen to you, but our children do. For some reason they're drawn to listen to what everybody says about them, whether they know them or not. And so today, in our culture, at least from my perspective, many of our children are very lonely, both boys and girls. This applies in different ways for boys, for men. But, there's a loneliness today, and maybe even for some of you, but more so for our children, from what I hear and what I see. You can't relate to a computer or to social media. You can relate to only, my understanding anyway, of human relations is you can only relate to what's in front of you and who's in front of you. That's called a relationship. And we forget that. Like right now, the way you're looking at me, when was the last time you looked at someone like that? When was the last time you looked at someone, especially someone that you love, the way you're looking at them? You know your faces are pretty nice. All of them. especially the older ones that have all kinds of wrinkles on them. There's a beauty of the life that's in those wrinkles for those who want to see and acknowledge and point out. And to let them know that you still have value. Your value is written on your face. I just want to let you know that I see it, I honor it, and I love it just the way that it is. And I wouldn't want you to change in any other way. I think that's in the gospel today. I wonder how this fits in. Jesus is taking care of his disciples. And it's important to know who he's taking care of. He's taking care of Peter, who just a couple days before denied him. He's taking care of Thomas, who doubted him. And he's taking care of two other guys who wanted to be first in his kingdom. So these are people who did things that we do ourselves and think, these guys shouldn't be around the table. They shouldn't be around it. But those very people that we think shouldn't be around the table are the ones that are around the table, because God's table is always bigger than our table. And that's what makes it special, and that's what makes this place special. No one does not belong here. There's no such thing that would come to God's mind or to Jesus' mind that there's someone who does not belong. His whole life was given so that people, especially the ones that felt they didn't belong, in his presence they did belong. They felt different. Someone saw them. Someone saw more to them. Someone wanted to take time to see more to them. And in seeing that more, it pointed it out to them. I went to the hospital yesterday to visit someone. She's dying of cancer, and she's been dying of it for 10 years. She had serious struggle, and she's done all the treatments that they could have and take all the medications, and the doctor just said now there's nothing else that we can do. So she called and asked if I would come and say a prayer for her. I've known her for 20, 30 years. And I wouldn't recognize her the way she is now, her body, but her spirit. I sat in amazement listening to her talk to me, and then at the end she said, would you say a prayer? So I said a prayer, and as I was praying, her tears, she started to cry, but they weren't tears of sadness. She was ready to go. You know, there was that readiness within her to know that I've lived the fullness of my life, and I'm just tired right now, so I need to go to the God that created me. Would you help me make that passage? Could you lead me in a prayer? As I did, I found myself crying a little too. And then when I got done with her, she took my hand right away and she started to shoot out a prayer for me. Well, I kind of smiled and I said, what's going on here? It was one of the most beautiful moments in my life. I stood there and I said, she's ministering to the minister. But more than that, eventually, I was able to break down that thing, that priest ministering to patient, to person in the hospital bed. And at the end of our life, it's just, she's my sister and I'm her brother. It's as simple as that. Gone are the titles. And my tears mixed with her tears, and we baptized each other to a new life. Both of us. I walked out of there different than when I walked in. More than I was when I walked in. And I believe she was the same. Her brother sent me a text that night and said, you made her day. I wrote back and said, well, she made mine too. So, brothers and sisters, we all have titles. We're all grandmoms, grandpas, aunts, uncles, husbands, wives, and they're all important, but you know they don't mean anything if you're not using them. Once you're a mother for life. Once you're a father for life. I would imagine you would get up each day and say, how can I father today in a new way? Because my child is new. Today she's 33 and I'm 60. There's no book for that. But I still want to be her father. And I pray she still wants to be my daughter. And I pray that we spend time working that out. How is this going to be for us today? I don't want to see you the way you were. I want to see you, honey, today the way you are. And I want you to see me the way that I am today, because we both learned from the past. We've both given each other so much joy, but we've also taken so much life from each other by sometimes not listening and understanding and judging and speaking to each other in ways that if I could go back, I'd take those words that I spoke, either spoken or written. So, when we are baptized, our parents are told, there's a simple sentence in there, it said, parents and godparents, make it your constant care to take care of these children. That's for all of us, eventually. We all hear that. So, in closing, this last story, I met with a couple. I met with two of their teenage daughters, which was very unusual, but they came in and sat and talked with me. And when they sat down and I looked at them, the first thing I did was reach in my pocket to give them each $20 because they were wearing jeans that had holes in them with the knees like that. I do that, just for fun. I know that style, but I just like to get the reaction. They did the same thing right away on cue when I gave them the money. What's this for? I said, for you to get a pair of jeans that have those holes in it. That's the style. I just like to see them do that. Like I'm a dummy and I don't know that style too. Matter of fact, I have one jeans with my there's holes in the marks and the other day. Imagine trying to be a teenager at your age. I tried to get wax to sew it up or staples to staple them closed. After I talked with her, the father came in. At the end of the talk with the father, I said to him, how do you take care of your wife? And he just looked at me like you're looking at me. Because as we discussed this, the thought would have never come to his mind. How do I take care of my wife, the most valuable gift that God has given me? How do I take care of my husband, the most valuable gift that he has given me? How do I take care of my children? And it's conscious choices that you make to care for each other that define who, as a mother, as a father, as a husband, as a wife, as a child, as a priest. It's conscious decisions that I make, not automatic things that happen every day and you just take for granted. Today, more than ever, it's conscious decisions that we make to care for each other that will renew within each of us the awareness of God being with us always, and not just in special places at special times. You're made in His image and likeness. It's a beautiful image. It's a beautiful likeness. You know that there's no other person on earth that has your fingerprints. Deciding God to shut up. They always know when to speak. I had a lot more to say, but not anymore. Come on. Thank you, little reminder over there. Let us pray.